Hi, I'm Annabelle.
And I'm Amy, and welcome to Escaping Purgatory, a podcast where we rewatch Supernatural and then talk it through in the hopes that we can finally escape this show.
Join us each week and leave comments on upcoming episodes, and together we can escape Supernatural Purgatory. What an episode! So we're on season 2, episode 17, Heart, and I feel like this was aptly named. This was so... Oh, I was going to say it was a shot through the heart, but that's just mean.
And you're to
everybody.
blame? Do you give love a bad name?
Yes. Yes, I do. You Bon Jovi fan, you. Yes. What an episode. Like, I kind of wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared for this.
No.
I wasn't prepared for the parallels. I wasn't prepared for any of it.
Me either. I knew this episode. Like, I knew what was going to happen in it, and I still wasn't ready, actually. Mm-hmm. So, this episode is written by Sarah Gamble, directed by Kim Manners. It has an 8.8 out of 10 on IMDb. It is a good episode. It's a sad episode, though.
It really is. So, I also noticed, it's not on IMDb, but as the sort of opening credits were showing up on screen, Rael Tucker and Sarah Gamble are script supervisors.
Okay. It's interesting.
Or no, not story supervisors.
Story supervisors. Huh, that's interesting as well.
Yeah. So they're doing something. They've come in with their idea of what they want to do with the script, and I feel like because of all the parallels in this episode, you can kind of see that.
Yeah, I think so too. I do think this is a very strong. It's a very main plot episode, although you would think it would be a Monster of the Week episode. Mm-hmm. It's funny because this could have come straight after Born with a Bad Sign, but obviously we had 2 episodes between these. Which I guess is giving you a break, but it would almost be...
Well, I was going to say, so you're right that it could have been Born After a Bad Sign, but the theme of the past 2 episodes is also in this one.
Yeah, you're right. I think it runs through every episode now until the season 2 finale. There's an underlying current of like, oh, but I'm evil, but I'm not evil, or like, it's all this kind of stuff that Sam's going through. It is very Sam focused. I quite enjoy that, and it makes sense as to where the story's going at this time.
Yeah, definitely.
I say Sam focused, actually.
I know, right? So the last scene in this, I was like, this wasn't a Sam episode. Because of reasons, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a perspective you can put on this from Dean, and it is interesting considering how much he isn't in this episode, how important it is to his storyline in this also. Oh, yeah. No, I definitely like this one.
Yeah, me too. So I guess we can jump on in. I don't know if it was the same for you, but on Netflix there was no recap.
Nope, no recap. They wanted a longer episode, I guess.
Yeah, and also just trying to think what they would recap of. I mean, maybe hunting people, saving things.
Family business. Bloodlust would be a good one to put through.
Yeah,
but it would have maybe given away too much in this episode. I think that's the problem with the recap, right?
Definitely, as we saw in like the previous episode. And so this time they're actually in San Francisco, California, which I used to live there, which is kind of fun. Though honestly, like they could have not had it set in San Francisco, and it wouldn't have mattered. It could have been any other sort of medium to large city.
Yeah.
You know, I'm surprised that they didn't make any sort of reference to Stanford, because Stanford's not that far from San Francisco. It's probably about an hour.
Oh, so just what you're saying is that bad things happen to Sam in California.
I think so. I think that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, he should just stop going back there.
Definitely. I mean, the next one's also in California too, so...
Yeah.
Anyway. So we're in San Francisco, and there's we're at a trendy kind of bar place. It's got a whole bunch of people in it. And there's a group of co-workers obviously enjoying their like after work drinks, and I guess a co-worker comes up, sort of trying to flirt with one of the main women there, and he's saying, we need to go back to the office because there's something else I need to file for the day. And she essentially just says, no, you're drunk, go home. I was like, well, can you drive me home? And she says, I've got you a cab.
She knows what's up with this guy. She clearly knows him. And kind of knows what he's like, I guess.
Exactly. So, as the camera and her track the guy whose name's Nate out the building, she catches the eye of, I wrote a shaggy man because that's what he really looks like.
I wrote guy in hoodie, but yeah, fine.
He's got like longish hair. Imagine the Winter Soldier, but with a beard.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
And there's a music shift. We learn that this woman's name is Maddie or Madison. Her face drops in, I guess, recognition of this person. Yeah. It obviously spooks her because she decides that she's going to leave. Yeah. And she leaves the bar. So, and they do the usual, like, she's walking down a dark alley and she hears like a trash can or something fall over. Yeah. And as she drives away, this man, clearly following her, comes out between two cars. Yeah. Now, this is one of the few moments of comic relief for this entire episode for me. Oh, right. Because I'm just imagining, because he's got like this really serious face on him, I just imagine him like knocking over this trash can and making a noise and just being like, shh, 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 shh. And then like to recompose himself and like walk out with this serious face.
That's pretty funny, to be fair. Okay, so yeah, she's fine. She goes to work the next day. We're following this woman through her day, I guess, and she's like filling water from a coffee pot. Notices a bloody handprint on a door. So she goes and has a look and finds the Nate, who I guess is her boss, ripped open over his desk. And that's the title card. So yeah, there's been a murder.
There's been a murder. We get to the morgue. Nate has now been autopsied as he's pulled out of the freezer storage area. And again, it's Sam there by himself. Yeah. I was like, of course it is.
Of course, yeah.
The medical examiner doesn't know what the bite marks are, but she says if she'd had to guess, she would say it was a wolf. Sam sort of guesses that the heart is missing.
Yeah. Interestingly, we never establish in this episode why the Monster of the Week takes the hearts of these victims.
That's true.
It never says in this. I know it's established later on in the lore, but it's just sort of, they decided that here, I guess, to fit with the theme of the episode, and then had to carry it through.
They must have done. I want to say something like with Skin and the shapeshifter. Yeah. I feel like they mentioned something about hearts in that one too. Like the victims weren't missing their heart, so it couldn't have been a werewolf. Yeah. Again, I might be projecting. This is kind of a long time ago now, and we're going in reverse, so I don't remember what we watched. But I do feel like that sort of inkling in my mind.
I think you're right. I think it has been mentioned before, actually. And I think it was because they mention werewolves alongside shapeshifters as like a category of shapeshifter. And I think that's how they say that it's not a werewolf. Yeah, so maybe this has already been established. But again, they don't say why they're taking their hearts. So Sam goes back to wherever they're staying, and Dean's sat cleaning his guns.
So I just want to say something real quick. They're in San Francisco. Yeah. Right? Like one of the gay capitals of the United States is like San Francisco and New York.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two places you go to figure yourself out, essentially.
Yeah.
I find it bizarre that that's why they chose to do this, and they didn't do, like, none of the characters are in the LGBTQA plus community. None of them.
Yeah.
So it's weird that you would go to San Francisco, which is known for, a very large gay community, and, like, it's a straight story.
I mean, 2007. Well, I don't know what you're expecting.
This is also true. It feels like a wasted opportunity. But saying that, for one of the scenes that happens later on, I can't imagine how they would have done that.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. They would have not open hand about.
I know. It just made me laugh. Like, because again, I didn't remember the scene happening, and when it happened, I was like, okay, yeah, no.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I got you with that. So yeah, he goes back. Dean's cleaning his guns in the apartment, wherever they're staying, and they kind of talk through this case. So this guy is kind of fits a long line of other disappearances. I think he's the first man to be killed, though. All the other people have gone missing at Hunter's Point, and it's generally like sex workers and women as well, and their like bodies have been found in the bay or whatever. The important detail in this is that all these disappearances happened in the week leading up to the full moon, and Dean is like totally stoked.
Dean, could you be a bigger geek about this?
I'm sorry, man, but what about a human by day, a freak animal killing machine by moonlight? Don't you understand? I mean, werewolves are badass. We haven't seen one since we were kids.
Okay, Sparky. And you know what? After we kill it, we can go to Disneyland.
He even calls them badasses, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
He cannot stand a shapeshifter, but he thinks that werewolves are badasses. And he opens like this sort of ammo box, and it's got all these silver bullets in it. Sam obviously picks up on his excitement.
Yeah, because Dean mentions that they haven't seen a werewolf since they were kids. And it's like, why, what? That, you can't just drop that line, Dean. Like, at what age were you hunting werewolves? Cause...
Too young. The answer is.
Yeah. Yeah, so we know that they can kill werewolves with a silver bullet to the heart because Dean tells us outright that's how they're going to do it. They decide to go talk to Madeline, who obviously found the body of her boss, to see if they can find any other information. And they tell her that they are detectives Landis and Dante. Now, those names come from directors from werewolf movies. I think specifically An American Werewolf in London. I've not seen that one. I've seen just like American Werewolf. Is that the first one? Was it Teen Wolf?
I don't actually know.
80s version of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called. I've seen that one. The transformation in that's pretty good for the 80s. If you get a chance to watch it, it's all physical effects, and it's pretty good, I think.
Oh. and it was Joe Dante who he directed The Howling, also in 1981.
I've not seen that one. I'm not really big on the werewolf movies. They're okay, but
they haven't really had a good comeback. Like, we've had a vampire comeback.
Yeah.
We've had zombie comebacks and ghost comebacks. Yeah. But werewolves, I'm guessing Twilight didn't do quite what it did with vampires for werewolves. I think that's what it kind of came down to. So they have arrived at Maddie's place. They've introduced themselves, and the neighbor is also there. They kind of subtly ask him to leave, and as he walks out, to me it looks like he was kind of maybe going in for a hug or maybe like a kiss on the cheek to Maddie, and she's like, "All right, see you later." Like, does not engage, just shuts that down.
She clearly has a lot of men pursuing her in this episode. Like, there was her boss, there's this guy Glenn, but she seems to be like almost kind of laughing it off kind of thing. But he's clearly into her. Yeah, you're completely right. They question her about her boss. She says that, after a few drinks, like, oh yeah, he tended to hit on basically anyone who moves. And Sam gives Dean a look.
You get a few scotches in him, and he started hitting on anyone in a 5-mile radius. You know the type.
Yeah, I do, actually.
And there's like a really long, awkward pause.
And like gives a pointed look at Dean. And Dean doesn't see it because he's like ogling this woman, essentially.
He's proving the point that Sam's making to him. Yeah, exactly. They ask her if anything kind of like weird has happened, and she says about her ex-boyfriend, whose name is Kurt, who she saw at the bar, and that he was just kind of staring at her and stalking her, she thinks. And that he's nothing happened, but he's just kind of scary to her, essentially. So this is the information they get from Maddie at the moment, and they leave, and they think that maybe Kurt could be the werewolf. Right, it would make sense. Maybe he saw her boss hitting on her and decided to werewolf him up.
Yeah. So she's then alone in her apartment, and she sort of hears a noise, hears a dog barking. There's very subtle like things about dogs and things like that in this episode. This is one of them, and she goes to the window and she sees Kurt outside, and then I guess she turns around and then looks back, and he's no longer there. It's very Michael Myers, seeing him through the sheets kind of thing. So we see Sam and Dean, and they're breaking into Kurt's place, and we know something's up because the camera is very low to the ground, and they've kind of got this weird like red outline to them. Yeah. So there's something in the room with them. And Dean checks the fridge and says there isn't anything in there.
Anything?
Nothing but leftovers in a 6-pack.
Freezer. Maybe there's some human hearts behind the Haagen-Dazs or something.
I love that
like,
line.
What is this Sam? Like, he's such a sassy little boy.
Yeah.
I have to say, this episode has some very extreme character development.
Yeah, it does,
like,
actually.
From the beginning of this episode for both of them to the end of this episode for both of them, like, this 50 minutes just was life-changing.
It really was. My gosh. So Dean hears a noise outside, and he goes to look out the balcony, and he sees like scratch marks down the walls, like something slid down there, and he tells Sam to have a look as well. It kind of cuts to a policeman walking through the alleyway, and we see him get attacked by what looks like a dog's perspective, like, because it's making growling noises and stuff. And Sam and Dean come down and obviously find him like exactly the same as Maddie's boss was, like all cut open at the front. And Sam says that he's going to call 911. They still think obviously Kurt is a werewolf because they were in his apartment. It looked like he jumped out the window and attacked this policeman. Yeah. So they decide that, well, Sam decides that they better go check on Maddie.
Yes. Yes, they do. Because, I mean, it's a good assumption, you know, all things considered. Like, this person is attacking people around Maddie, so she might be next. They arrive at the apartment, and they're, like, knocking on the door, and sort of Glenn comes out, and that sort of asks what's going on, and Dean's just like, it's got nothing to do with you, sir. Kind of. She opens the door and tells them that Kirk was outside the night before. Yeah. Dean then suggests that one of them should stay.
All right, you go. I'll stay.
Forget that. You go after the creepy ex. I'm gonna hang here with the hot chick.
Dude, why do you always get to hang out with the girls?
Because I'm older.
No, screw that. We settled this the old-fashioned way.
I was like, well, we know Sam's gonna stay because he always does. He always stays with the ladies, right? So, of what we've seen,
I guess
every time there's a choice, it's always Sam.
I was trying to think about this because I don't know. Dean sometimes stays with them indoors, and Sam's usually lurking outside if they're gonna stay.
This is true.
But no, I don't think it's as uneven as Dean thinks it is.
Definitely.
My favourite bit about this, he says, "I always stay with the hot girl," and Sam's like, Sam was going to accept it for a second. Like, you saw it in his face. He was like, okay, fine. And then he was like, no. Dean says, like, I'm the oldest. And Sam takes his coffee off him. And, like, just... Dean is so affronted by this. Like, watching his coffee disappear from his hands. Like, what are you doing?
But then they settle it with the good old rock, paper, scissors.
Yes.
Dean, always with the scissors.
Shut up. 2 out of 3.
Come on! Bundle up out there, all right?
This episode has 2 moments for me where it's like I just think of the gag reel. The first one was earlier with the gun cleaning scene.
Yeah.
And then this one where like Dean or Jensen looks genuinely confused about which version they're about to do.
Do you think that's why they just kept it as like, because Dean throws scissors twice, because he throws scissors and Sam throws rock, and then Dean's obviously like, no, best 2 out of 3, and he do it again exactly the same. Do you think partly that's why it's just they just couldn't get which version, so like just do it again the same?
I don't think so, because so Sam also says you always go for scissors, and so when he says 2 out of 3, like maybe Dean was like,
good tactic.
I'm not, like he knows what I'm gonna do, but he'll do something else this time. But no, obviously it doesn't work because Sam wins the game.
I feel like we also need to talk about Dean's like blue steel face while he's doing rock paper scissors, because what was that?
Like a full-on stare down.
The concentration. He's got like fully like pursed mouth. Like, yes, gonna win this.
I am determined to hang out with this hot chick tonight.
Yes.
And then Sam's line of bundle up out there, right?
I know. Just rubbing it in. I mean, arguably, Dean has a better time because he lost this.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think the events of this episode would have happened if Dean was the one that stayed.
That's true, actually. I don't think that Maddie was into Dean from off. No.
So I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Maddie's older than Sam? I do.
Yeah, I think by a few years, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just because of some of the stuff that happens in like the next few scenes. Leads me to believe that. So Maddie's walking through the apartment. She's like looking through her mail, and Sam's just sort of awkwardly sat at her kitchen table.
Yeah.
Like not really saying anything, not really sparking up any sort of conversation, just sort of like catching each other's eye and giving awkward like half smiles, polite smiles. And then I guess Maddie's had enough because she goes and like gets a laundry basket and just like dumps her underwear in front of him, just folds this lingerie in front of Sam, and Sam's like, okay, I'll go sit on the couch.
Like, do you think this move has ever worked on anybody ever? Like, what move is this? Like, yes, look at my like underwear. It's such a weird flirtation.
It is. It's like, to me, this is like a male fantasy flirtation.
Yes.
Rather than a real flirtation. Like, this wouldn't happen in real life, but a guy would want it to happen.
Also, just logistically here, why would you have a basket just full of your best underwear? Did she just go to her drawer, like get out all her nicest stuff and was like, I'm going to pretend that I cleaned these recently, and like, it's just really weird.
I have a comment about that too, because there's some, like, we'll get to it, and it's not that long. But yeah. So this also brought up the point for me that like Sam's acting like a very nervous teenage boy. So this is again another reason why I think she's older than he is, because like he doesn't know how to talk to her. Like and it got me thinking, do you think Jessica's the one who made the move, like to ask him out?
I think probably. I think if we've seen Sam's interactions with women before, like if you think about Sarah as well, like Sarah was very forthright with him also, I feel.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think Sam often makes the first move. But I don't know if we're going to get sad for a second, because it kind of almost feels like the woman should be making the choice about pursuing him because, you know, the curse.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I can see that.
So what I'm saying is maybe it changed after Jessica. Like, yeah. But no, I think Sam's always kind of, if you watch some of the flashback episodes, I feel like he's always been kind of awkward around women.
I'm in agreement with that. Oh, so when he moves to the couch, Dean calls him and basically calls him out for doing exactly what he just did, like sitting awkwardly, not knowing what to say. Essentially, just sort of it's basically an update phone call. There's nothing really too much to say on that. And then Maddie comes over to sit on the couch next to him, and I'm glad they brought Kim Manners to do this episode because he framed this without seeing their faces. Yeah. And if you blurred out their faces, the way that this is shot with them being so tight in the frame and like so close to the edges all the way around. Yeah. It makes you feel claustrophobic. It makes you feel like tension. Yeah. And I was just like, oh God, I don't like I paused it and just looked at it and I was like, this if you wanted to talk about visual storytelling, this is a really good example of it.
Yeah. Because they're like wedged into that couch and it's not that small, but like because it's framed, you're right. It's so good. I really like that. Madison puts on a TV show, which is, I guess, some kind of soap opera, and Sam kind of rolls his eyes. And she's like, I saw that. Like, I'm watching this anyway. This is my house, my show. And then they kind of, like, cut to a little bit later, and Sam's, like, leaning forward, like, well into it. Because, of course he is. That's a family trait. They all love soap operas.
Wait, so Kendall married Ethan's father just to get back at him?
Yep. And now she's set to inherit all the casinos that were supposed to go to Ethan.
What a bitch.
Admit it, you're hooked.
No. I wouldn't say I'm hooked. That.
And then once it's finished, he kind of asks her some personal questions, but he does, kind of do it in a polite way. Like, can I ask you something?
So this is what I was going to say for, like, what you're saying, did she take out her underwear to, like, her best underwear? Yeah. Because he says, can I ask you a personal question? And her response is, well, you've seen my entire underwear collection.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm like, no. He has not seen your entire underwear collection. As any person who has gone through having periods will know, you do not just own lacy underwear. Yeah. It's just not... You have a pair of granny pants for that bad day.
Exactly. So... Where's the granny pants, Madison? Because
they were. That was not your entire underwear collection. That was your curated underwear collection.
Absolutely, that was. Oh my goodness.
And I mean, the question that he asks is incredibly rude. Something about it made me really like, why would you even ask that? Because his question is, well, why did you date Kirk? He's obviously a loser. He kind of gets a roundabout way to it because he calls her intelligent and like references the really academic books. I don't remember the word he used for, but she has a whole bunch of books. She's intelligent. She's independent. Basically, all of Sam's like, all the things he looks for in a woman. Yeah. And I was just like, don't do this. Don't bring up someone's dating history in this kind of way. Like, somebody could literally say the same thing about you and Jessica.
Yeah, exactly. I think it gives a chance for Maddie to explain like why she broke up with Kurt, because basically she went through an experience where she was mugged, and then afterwards it kind of changed her perspective on life, and she realized that she should break up with him and kind of take control of her situation. And Sam says like that's pretty impressive, to basically take like a bad situation and make it good for yourself. So of course, as they're just getting like cozy, Dean rings again, and he's at a strip club with Kurt, or just watching him from across the stage, and he's having a pretty good time. I enjoyed Kim Manners for this because I really liked how they just shot Dean's like head and shoulders, like looking at the stage with just the woman's feet. in the frame while he's like looking up. Also, he tipped, so good for him.
Yes. I also made a note of that. So. It may have only been $1, but it's better than what Kirk was doing, because he was just staring at her.
Exactly. You should always tip.
Definitely. So it's now nighttime, and so in this shot the moon's not full, but then in like the shot after the next it is, but whatever, who cares? Consistency. So we see the moon, and Dean is outside of Kirk's place, and he's watching the balcony where they had seen the claw marks sort of the night before. He sees the light turn on, and then the glass door breaks. He doesn't see it, but then he runs up to the rescue, and he sees it's Maddie who's actually attacking Kirk.
Yeah.
And he is dead. Dean gets another concussion, probably.
Yeah. He does manage to cut her arm with the silver knife as she jumps out the window.
During all of that, there's a little bit of cutting between Sam and sort of sitting in the living room while Maddie's asleep. Like, he sort of looks behind him into the bedroom, and like he doesn't hear anything, so he assumes she's still there. Yeah. So Sam gets a call from Dean, and basically tells Sam that it's Maddie. It was been Maddie the whole time.
Dean, you okay?
Yeah, now that I'm conscious. The werewolf knocked me out. Sam, it's Madison.
What?
Yeah, awesome job of keeping an eye on her.
And to check her arm to see if the cut is there.
Yeah.
And then Sam goes into the room. Yeah. She's now has no clothes on, and Madison's very confused. Like, she asks Sam, where's my clothes? Yeah. And then Sam sees the cut on her arm and his conflicted face.
I know.
Oy.
All the props to Jared in this episode, because his acting was really, really, really good. Yeah, the way that his face just like shuts down as soon as he sees it, because he really doesn't believe Dean on the phone that it's Maddie. He's like, no, it couldn't possibly be. I was here all night. She's asleep. She's fine. And then as soon as he sees it, his face just like completely changes. He goes to the front door and like locks them in essentially and says like, we're staying here. And then it cuts to Sam, and Maddie is now tied to a chair.
The whole I'm a cop trip, God, I am so stupid.
Well, I guess neither of us are who we said we were, huh?
Sam, you're sick, okay? You're imagining things. Monsters don't exist. Not really.
You know what?
He really is concerned. I mean, yeah, fair. And Sam saying, like, she says to Sam, like, you need help as well, which I thought was quite a good line. Dean then knocks on the door, and immediately as he walks to the door, I notice he gets his gun out.
How you doing? My head feels great, thanks.
Sam kind of takes Dean aside, and they talk about the fact that Madison doesn't seem to remember being a werewolf, essentially. Dean references, like, the Incredible Hulk, which is quite good, I thought. And but it doesn't seem like that could be the case, because she targeted people that she knew. So her boss, her ex-boyfriend, like, there's a pattern there. Mm-hmm. You know, Sam's making excuses for her this whole time. So he's like, well, you know, what if she just unconsciously sees him as a threat? What if she's killing people and has no control over it? He says, like, I understand her. And it's just like, oh, Sam.
Yeah.
Oh, Sam. One thing that did annoy me about this is the line, like, what if she's killing people and has no control over it, is obviously a reference to Sam being possessed by Meg. And they make no comparison at all in this episode to it. It's only ever framed when they're making these parallels as the kind of yellow-eyed demon's control over Sam, I think, rather than the experience that he had with Meg possessing him and him actually killing people, which is an exact comparison to this, but they don't seem to want to make it.
It's like they almost want to forget it ever happened, because if they don't talk about it, it didn't happen.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of where it's sort of boiling down to. And you know, well, Dean's response of like, exactly, she can't control it, therefore we can't let her live. That's what stuck out more to me than the fact that Meg, because again, I didn't even think about that. I really didn't. This is the beginning of like some of the conversations that happened a little bit later on in this episode, and I was just like, oh, is he starting to realise something? Is he starting to realise something? And I don't think he does, actually.
Yeah, because like Dean's still calling her a monster, and it's like, where is this coming from? Like, have we not had? Where is this character development? Because it's kind of, he seems stuck on this, and maybe this episode is the turning point. But then I thought that might have been Bloodlust. Like, it just seems to keep coming back to, well, maybe some monsters aren't so bad, or it almost. There's been a few episodes where it seems like Dean's making progress with that, and then the next episode where it comes up again, he seems to be right back at square one with his views on this.
Again, this acting in this like next sort of this little scene here as well, because Sam says, you know, I understand that, like you said, and then it shows Dean's face, and it goes from confusion to realization to dismissal.
Okay.
In about like a second. Like, it's this really quick, like, what are you talking about? Oh, nah, like, you're not the same.
Yeah. It's just, he can't frame Sam in the same way as everything else that's happening. There's like a mental block there where he just can't make that connection. It's just, it starts to happen, then it's just like, no.
Yeah. So something happens, and Sam confronts Maddie about the mugging that had happened and asks if she was bitten, and she's like, well, how would you know that? They ask where she was at the time of the mugging. She says Hunter's Point. Like, Sam moves her hair, and she sees this big bite mark on the back of her neck.
Yeah, because Sam has remembered like a piece of lore, or it was a theory that John had.
Dad's theory. Lycanthropy might have a cure if you kill the werewolf who bit you, severing the bloodline.
Might have a cure, meaning who the hell knows?
I've definitely heard that before. I don't know whether it's because I've heard it in Supernatural. But I feel like that is like a common like myth about werewolves and maybe vampires as well.
They have this like heart-to-heart, and they go back to talk about possible solution. The only reason why sort of Dean relents is because Sam says we can save this girl.
Yeah.
But Dean, I need you to go out there. At least go look for the thing. Dean, please. We can save this girl.
Sam's been making this point. Again, like we're stuck on. Dean's very much like the hunting things side of the motto, and Sam is the saving people side. And there has been a few things. So maybe like roadkill plays into this, where they actually managed to get her to move on rather than having to do something else. They actually had no choice other than for that to happen. But you know, again, maybe bloodlust plays into this. Maybe the fact that they managed to exorcise Meg from Sam. Like, there's a few things it could be, but I think Sam's sincere face as well, kind of, Dean can't say no to him sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And like this, it feels very much like, well, this is why you brought me back.
Yeah.
Is to save people. Yeah. So if we can't even save her, then why am I here, kind of?
Yeah. Because they really have no reason to be hunting together at this point. There isn't actually, right? Other than the whole yellow eyes threat, etc. I mean, they could be doing that separately. They were already working together before because they were trying to find John. So I do think partly some of this is like Dean's kind of worried that Sam's going to leave at some point, and so sometimes he has to give in to him, even if he, in this case, he thinks that he's wrong.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the thing that is probably keeping Dean around, and maybe even Sam around Dean rather, is the fact that Sam wants someone to keep tabs on him.
Yeah, that's definitely part of the reason also. So it's decided that Sam's going to stay with Maddie on the agreement that if she does escape, he'll shoot her. Like, Dean makes him agree to that. As Dean leaves, Maddie's still pleading with Sam to be let go, obviously. And he has this conversation with her that says, and he basically says, like, look, we're going to try and save you. Like, once this is all over, I'll leave. You never have to see me again, but we're trying to help you out. And he's trying to convince her. She's obviously not convinced because she thinks he's absolutely crazy and believes in werewolves.
I do have one thing I would like to say about this. There's one line in here that I was like, this has to be intentional.
But if this goes the way I pray it does.
Usually I feel like the phrase is, if it goes how I hope it goes. That has to be a choice, right? And considering the last episode that Sarah Gamble wrote was Houses of the Holy.
Mm-hmm. I know.
What is that?
They're still playing on like Sam's spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I also made a note of that. I was like, yeah, that does continue on. It's funny because it is such a weird turn of phrase. Like, you wouldn't say it like that. So, yeah. Oh, Sam. Poor Sam.
Oh, Sam.
Oh, he says, like, I'll leave and this would just be a bad memory. And I'm like, oh, Sam. Anyway.
And it got me thinking, like, is that how they feel about everybody who they've saved? That eventually they'll just become a bad memory? And that's why they don't go back to them to, like, check up on them?
Yeah, I think so. You know, they probably imagine themselves in that situation. Like, if you had a ghost haunting your house and then two guys turned up and, like, burned your house down or whatever they did. Like, you would want to forget that incident and never see them again. If
you did see them again, your instant reaction would be like, what's going on? What's about to, like, what horrible thing is about to happen because these guys are back?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And I don't think people stop having that reaction to Sam and Dean until much, much, much later in the series. You know, I think, when are people ever pleased to see them? You know?
Only the people that become their family.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we see a woman at Hunter's Point who's a sex worker. She's like waiting on a corner and she hears a noise, and this kind of cuts in between two things. We kind of see her being chased down an alleyway. Meanwhile, while this is happening, Maddie immediately gets out of being tied to a chair. Like, come on, Sam.
Yeah. Like wouldn't you use some sort of silver, like maybe even like a necklace or something like an irritant, so that she couldn't just get out and like.
Do they not have chains in the car? Because they just used like a real light rope to tie her there. They knew she was going to turn. Anyway. So she gets out and he does point the gun at her but doesn't use it, and it ends up locking her in a room. And then we cut back and Dean has saved this woman. She's being attacked, but he like immediately saves her and shoots the guy, the werewolf that's attacking her. And yes, the woman just looks at him, is like scared out of her mind and just runs off, which fair.
Yeah.
Dean, the guy he shot is still alive, and he watches him change back from a werewolf to a person, and it turns out that this werewolf is Glenn. And as he turns back to a human, he clearly doesn't remember anything that's happened because he asks Dean for help and doesn't understand why he's been shot.
Dean's like, you're gonna be alright, bud, basically. I wonder if this changes his perspective a little bit on black and white monsters.
I think this whole episode does, because I really think. So when he's killed monsters before, like think about the vampire in Bloodlust, like he immediately just decapitated him, so he didn't have to deal with the aftermath of that. But this guy was still alive after he'd shot him, and he kind of had to deal with that.
And he had to deal with the fact that he not only did this monster turn back into a human who didn't know what they were doing.
Exactly. It's he does look regretful, like definitely, for sure. So obviously Sam has managed to lock Maddie in a room, and when she wakes up he opens the door and again he kind of repeats, like, you know, it's over now, you never have to see me again. But Maddie kind of looks around and she sees all the scratches on her wall, so she knows now that he was telling the truth, or, you know, something happened at least. Dean then turns up and he's pretty, you know, sad about Glenn. Like he says to Sam, like, he had no clue what he was doing, you know, which kind of, it also does confirm the fact that, you know, Sam was saying that Maddie didn't know, and also it adds to this that, because I think Dean before he shot Glenn, thought Maddie was just lying, that, you know, that she didn't remember. Oh yeah, she's a werewolf, she's evil, you know. Having that confirmation that she really doesn't know what she's doing kind of changes his thought on that.
Yeah, definitely. And it kind of, I feel like they changed this
Mm-hmm.
for werewolves later on because these two are the only two that don't know what's going on with them. But I feel like the werewolves that we meet later on, they have a bit more control over, maybe not their changes, but like they're aware of what they do when they've changed.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I do. I wonder if it is to do because they eventually bring in the concept of like alpha monsters, right? And I feel like with werewolves, but like someone correct me on this, that maybe you have more control over that the closer you are in the bloodline to the alpha. I may be wrong. I may be just making things up, but they do definitely change this because I think of other werewolves that are in the series. They kind of have a conversation and they're asking like, you know, why did Glenn turn Maddie? But there's no real rhyme or reason for it, I don't think. Like, they say like maybe it was some kind of instinct, but she was in the place where the werewolf was hunting, and like maybe he did recognize her on some level, but like, it's just unfortunate, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that one. Like, because Glenn had been targeting sex workers, but then he turned Maddie.
Yeah.
So, and he was about to attack another sex worker. So I think it was more instinctual than anything.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
While they're having this conversation, they're sat in the car outside Maddie's house. And I love her for this.
You know, for a stakeout, your car's a bit conspicuous. What are you still doing here?
Like,
we've been saying it all along.
We've been it all along. Thank you, Maddie.
Yeah, the characters that call them out on their like obvious bullshit don't seem to last, do they?
No, that's true. That's true.
Anyway, they enter her apartment and Dean is very much being Dean, being the clown, and like breaks the tension. A montage of the day happens.
Yeah.
Showing various parts of like San Francisco, and then it's night. I do love the fact that like Dean sat at the kitchen table, they're sat on the sofa. Like they stopped this montage to have this scene.
I know.
Which felt kind of out of place. Because he puts his gun on the table and he's like, oh no, you can carry on your conversation, and then it goes to Maddie and Sam, but they don't have a conversation. Like it then cuts to like they just like a montage of the night, and then it's morning. So I was like, why did they stop this montage just to have this one scene?
They just wanted to show Dean like third wheeling in this situation because it's literally Maddie and Sam just staring into each other's eyes on the sofa, like while he's watching them to see if she's going to turn into a werewolf. Like it's a super weird situation.
So they go to the window and they see like the sun's come up and it's worked. She didn't turn during the night. You know, she's like super happy, and she turns and hugs Sam, and is like, it's a very engulfing hug. Like she literally disappears into Sam's arms.
Yeah.
And Dean's there like with the sun gloriously lighting up his face, and he's like, I think I deserve some thanks too. And she's like, oh yeah, thank you.
Do you think he wanted a hug? Do you think he was trying to get a hug out of that situation?
I think so too.
I think so.
Yeah, I think he did. He's kind of realizes more his third wheeling, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna just go to the hotel.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna head back to the hotel and watch some pay-per-view or something.
And just like a Breakfast Club like fist pump in the air as he's walking away.
Such a dog.
He is. And so they get close, and Sam says there's no way we could go back to how it was before, you know.
I mean, he has a pretty good point here because they've been through a lot. Like, they were kind of flirting with each other, and then it turned out that he was lying about who he was and tied her to a chair. Like, it's very intense. So
yes.
I guess she's forgiven him for that because he saved her. It's still weird.
And I mean, no, yeah. Being in her position, no matter how attractive you might find that person, I don't think you could forgive them overnight for tying you to a chair.
Yeah, and she was like properly scared, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, they were wielding guns in her face,
Saying they were going to shoot her. Like, seriously.
But this is TV, so
exactly.
you know, we haven't had an extended inferred sex scene in a long time. It's a lot of touching, a lot of making out, a lot of nakedness.
There's a fireplace for some reason. Like, I didn't even know her apartment had a fireplace, but fine.
Was there? I feel like there was a fireplace in Cassie's place too.
I think in the office, maybe. No, I don't know.
I think I'm probably just projecting on that one. But, apparently, did this all day because now it's nighttime, and they're both waking up.
That's a good point, because they started this at what, dawn, and now it's like night. Now it's nighttime. Okay, go.
Well,
go
I
down,
mean,
I guess.
That's a long time. That's a good 12 hours, right?
Yeah. Time is weird in Supernatural. We established this. Maybe they had lunch, you know. It's all good. That fireplace was burning for a long time.
Definitely. And as Sam wakes up, Maddie's no longer in the bed. She's by the window, and she's actually transformed back into a werewolf. So actually, it didn't work.
Yep.
And he doesn't quite manage to catch her before she jumps out the window. Mm-hmm. Sam then, like, frantically runs to the hotel. My question is, why?
I think, okay, I've got this. Like, I think that, so he says after he knocked on the door to Dean that he did call Bobby, so I imagine this is what happened. Like, he got dressed, immediately called Bobby. I that was his first instinct, I guess, to call Bobby and be like, because Bobby is the lore expert, and Sam, you know, found this information that he could turn her back, and it hasn't worked. So he would check in with him and be like, look, I tried this, it definitely hasn't worked. Like, is there anything else? And probably had this conversation on the way to get to Dean. Interesting that his first instinct is to call Bobby rather than Dean, I feel. But it makes sense because it is lore-based, this. And what's Dean's alternative going to be? He doesn't have one.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess in Sam's mind, he's kind of okay with her potentially killing somebody if he can find information to save her. Rather than going to Dean, he would immediately get in his car and try and chase her down.
Exactly. And I think that's because Sam sees Maddie as the victim of the werewolf, you know, rather than a monster, as Dean does. So kind of like the fact that she's killing these people is almost a symptom of what happened to her rather than something that she's causing.
Yeah, and it may also be, like, now that you've mentioned, like, Sam being possessed, that could also be play into why he thinks that.
Yeah.
Versus Dean, who doesn't have that experience of, like, being out of control. It's interesting that Dean calls her a sleep turner.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they ever really kind of go into more of that kind of aspect, which is, it's a bit of a shame, but they couldn't do so much.
I don't think they follow this up with the fact that, like, they turn while they're asleep. I don't think that ever happens again. Mm-mm. They just wanted the moment where they thought they'd won. That's the only reason for this.
Yeah, definitely. But so again, Bobby has confirmed that severing the bloodline wouldn't have worked anyway, and that, you know, she's evil, and that, you know, we have to kill her because she's evil, even if she's a good person.
What?
I hate to say it, she's a sweet girl, but part of her is...
Evil?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they say about me, Dean. So me you won't kill, but her you're just gonna blow away?
Sam's calling out Dean's blatant hypocrisy here, in that he's so ready to kill Maddie because she's a werewolf and therefore evil, but he already showed Sam in Born Under a Bad Sign that he's definitely not ever going to do that for Sam.
Yeah,
there seems to be no circumstance in which Dean would kill Sam.
No, and I don't think that he ever does. I wrote here, in capital letters and an exclamation point, the foreshadowing. Because really, like, Dean will never kill him.
No.
Dean will never kill him.
No. This is it, and it's it's showing that there's a double standard for Sam in Dean's mind. He can't connect Sam to evil. Like it just doesn't happen. Like he can't do it. Like the pencil breaks as he tries to draw the line. Like it doesn't work. He can't. Maddie rings Sam, and she's obviously very confused. She's woken up somewhere, and has realised what's happened to her again. So they all kind of meet back up at the apartment. And I like the shot of this because there's a gun just like casually laying on her kitchen table, and Maddie is just staring at it. Sam is kind of ranting really about there being an answer somewhere, like there must be something they can do. And Dean kind of interrupts him and says straight to Madison,
Madison, you deserve to know. We've scoured every source. There's just no cure.
And he then says, like, we could lock you up at night, but if you ever get out, you're going to kill somebody. Like, he's very straight with her.
Yeah.
Because I think he knows that Sam can't be.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. While I was watching this, I was like, oh, why don't they find, like, a werewolf pack like they did the vampire pack? And I was like, well, hang on. This is turning into a little bit of, like, the demons and the vampire situation where, like, they haven't come across another werewolf since they were children.
Yeah.
So how would they suddenly find, like, a whole bunch of them that may have, like, be able to control each other in some kind of way?
Yeah.
For this kind of werewolf right now, they seem to be solo ones.
Yeah.
Like, whereas I feel like later on, because Glenn turned her, they would have been together.
Yeah, possibly. It's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting how werewolf lore changes in the show, I think, because it makes this episode actually more tragic in some ways.
It does. And also, I guess because they were basing it on, like, American Werewolf in London and stuff like that, I'm fairly certain they're, like, lone werewolves.
Yeah, I think so. There's no sort of, like, pack idea here, is there? Maddie then, she says to Sam, this is awful, this conversation.
So I guess that's all there is to it then.
Stop it. Don't talk like that.
Sam, I don't want to hurt anyone else. I don't want to hurt you.
But then says, like, I can't shoot myself, I need you to do it. Immediately contradicting that she doesn't want to hurt Sam, but fine.
She doesn't want to physically hurt Sam.
Yeah, let's go with that.
There's no, at this point, there's no, like, differentiation between emotional harm and physical harm.
No, definitely
in the show.
Not. Sam doesn't want to, obviously, but she says that she's a monster. Sam is still convinced. He even says here, like, I'm gonna save you. Like, he says to her, I'm gonna save you. And she basically says, like, this is how you're gonna save me. Like, you're gonna shoot me. It's very... Yeah. This is the... Okay. This is the exact conversation that Sam had with Dean.
Yes.
This is the exact same conversation. And I appreciate that they had it because I don't know how much Sam realised until this episode the position that he put Dean in.
I was exactly on the same wavelength with you on that because... And I do think after this he has to realise, right? Yeah. It has to be a learning moment that
yes and no. I think
this is exactly what you're asking Dean to do. And what makes it worse is that you've known this chick for 3 days. You're asking someone who's known you your whole life and has saved you multiple times in his life to do this one thing that you can't do for a girl that you've just met. Yep.
He must think about it after this. Like, it's such an exact mirroring of his situation. Yeah. It's almost like it was written that way.
It's almost like it was written. Yeah, exactly. Dean comes over and, like, takes the gun from Sam. And Sam sort of walks off, I guess, to, like, come to terms with what's being asked of him. Yeah. And Dean goes to try and comfort Sam. Yeah. He does say, like, I can do it. I'll do it for you so you don't have to.
I'm sorry. No, you're right. She's right. Sammy, I got this one. I'll do it. She asked me to. You don't have to. Yes, I do.
And Sam says, no, she asked me to do it, so I have to.
Mm-hmm.
This answers the question, if the roles were reversed, would Sam kill Dean? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think it's very true.
Mm-hmm.
That sucks.
It does. It really does. I think that might be the reason for the single tear.
Yeah, because, okay. So there's a lot of crying in the scene, obviously.
Yes.
The music as well is extremely emotional. Like, the music they chose for this was, good choice, but also terrible, horrible choice. How dare you? So Dean hands the gun over, and Sam says to him, like, just wait here. And the acting when this was so good, because Sam's obviously crying. As he goes to turn into the room, like, you can see him, like, shift persona. Like, he's really sad while he's talking to Dean, and then as he turns into the room, like, you see him kind of steel himself for what he has to do as he walks in. And then the camera cuts back to Dean's face, and he's crying. Single man tear is present. And the way that he flinches when he hears the gunshot is just...
Oh my god. Honestly, like, when this was all happening, I was like, no, they're not. No, they're not. No, they're not.
I know.
And then that happened. I was like, oh my god, they did.
Yeah.
And so that was also the moment that I was like, oh no, this was a Dean episode. That was the moment that I was like, this is a Dean episode.
This is my thing, because you said earlier, like, you know, this does put into perspective for Sam what he asked of Dean, because this is where the episode ends. That's it. Leaves you on that really fun note for the week. But I also think partly Sam did this. Now, I know that Madison asked him to shoot her, but I also think there's a little bit, just maybe a unconscious part of this that is proving a point to Dean, that by shooting her, he's kind of carrying out her wishes and, like, saving her. I say saving her in quotation marks.
Right.
And that Dean should be able to do that for him because he was able to do that for Madison. Just lay that out there.
Yeah, I mean, because like I said at the beginning, the parallels between this situation and Sam's situation, I don't know if there has to be a stronger word than parallels, because it is exactly the same. It's exactly the same.
Yeah. Because
there is no cure for Sam, and he's asked someone else, which is why I'm like, this should have really been a learning moment for Sam, of asking Dean to do this for him.
Yeah, I agree.
Because that's as horrible as, you know, suicide is. I feel like asking somebody else to do it for you is even worse. Especially, okay, in the terms of this show,
yes,
we take it outside of the show, and like when we're talking about like euthanasia in that kind of way, I feel like it's a different situation, because it's anyway, it's a different situation.
It is, yeah.
Whereas this, it's just, Sam should realize what he's asking.
Yeah.
And that he should be like, yes, he's proving a point to Dean that, like, I can do this for her, you can do this for me.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
It's not fair, because he knows the emotional, like, baggage that's going to have.
I mean, he doesn't even fully understand that emotional baggage, because you're right, he knew Maddie like 3 days. He didn't raise her. Like, that's you know, that's not his daughter. Like, for Dean, Sam is his you know, basically his son. Like, he raised him. He's his younger brother. It's all wrapped up, like, his whole family. His whole kind of everything, almost, because Dean doesn't really have friends. Like, he doesn't really have anyone else. He's got Sam, and that's it. And then, like, Sam's asking him to do this. It's not fair. And I do appreciate that they did this episode, actually, because I think that it makes you rethink the choice. Because maybe if you had been watching this up to this point, you could have been like, oh, you know, actually, you know, Sam's right. He's going to turn bad at some point. Like, Dean should definitely, like, you know, respect his wishes.
I honestly don't think Sam is still the same after this.
Yeah.
He still wants he still wants Dean to take his life.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to do it for himself. Now, is that something to do with his religious, like, the reveal of his religious, like, tendencies now?
I think the thing that's happening here is that Sam... I don't know that Sam is a good judge of when he's gone too far. And I think partly him asking Dean to like, shoot him when he's gone too far is that he's almost trusting Dean's judgment as to when that is, right? So that's why he would ask him to do that, because I think there's a kind of line that Sam has, and I think he's already crossed that. When he was possessed by Meg, you know, he crossed the line into, like, killing a person, like killing, and he hadn't done that before, but it was out of his control. And I don't think, because obviously it was Meg talking in that episode, asking Dean to like shoot him because he's gone too far. I don't know if Sam would have done the same. Like, I don't know if at the end of that episode, Sam would have said that same thing. So
I agree.
I do think that it's basically what it comes down to is trust. And I think this is Sam trusting Dean to know when the time is right. The problem with that is that there's never going to be a right time for Dean.
No, he will always make excuses.
Yeah.
As he did in that episode.
Exactly.
I mean, obviously it was Meg's fault. In that one, it would be Meg. Yeah. If the yellow-eyed... Because they don't know what the plan is for the yellow-eyed demon. They don't know, really, the extent of what Sam is going to do.
No.
Because the thing with what they've seen with the other children that have been given the demon blood stuff, they were given suggestions and then they carried them out.
Yeah.
Like, there was no... The yellow-eyed man came to them in a dream and was telling them, like, to do all this, that, and the other. Well, you had the guy at the beginning of Hunted.
Yeah.
You know, he was telling me this, but I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So there is no actual control at this point over the people.
The choice is there. They have the choice, right?
Yeah.
And choice is a really important theme in Supernatural generally. I think that's where this kind of started to come in because, yeah, you're right. Sam is making the choice to try and not be evil, but he's saying that if that free will is taken away from him, that's when he wants Dean to step in. And I think that continues. That theme of, like, if my own will gets taken from me, like, you have to sort it out, is basically the rest of the show.
Yeah, you're right. There you go. That's the summary of Supernatural. You don't have to watch it anymore.
No. I want to talk for a second again about werewolves, and this might be spoilery, so just beware. This episode is way more tragic on a rewatch. Now we know what we know about werewolves. Because, first of all, they just sent Maddie to purgatory. She didn't want to be a werewolf, and now she gets to be a werewolf for all of eternity, so good for her. And then, secondly, we know that there are werewolves out there who can live absolutely normal lives and be perfectly fine people and, like, have control of their situation. And I don't think that when they find this stuff out that Madison has ever mentioned and, like, talk about throwbacks, this would have been a great one. But I think it's purely that they just didn't think about it.
Yeah.
They take the tropes that the fans kind of latch onto, and they did do callbacks to that. But, like, really, like, they should look at the lore of the show, because this would have been a great one. Like, what if Dean had encountered Maddie in purgatory, right?
That would be crazy.
Yeah, and then he goes back and tells Sam, like, I saw Madison. Like, that would have been amazing.
I can't even imagine what that conversation would have been like.
Tragic.
Sam would have... Yeah. You know what would have probably happened? Sam probably would have tried to get to purgatory and pull her out.
Yeah, because the guilt of this episode. I don't know. They're so callous later on sometimes about some of the people they do kill. I don't know if they'd... That sounds really awful, but I don't know if they'd care enough.
I think the life just takes over them. They get jaded by it.
I think so too, yeah. Definitely. And, you know, there could have been, Like anyway, there could have been some callbacks. It would have been quite a good one, I feel, especially when you find out more stuff about monsters later on. But
yeah, definitely.
You know.
And maybe they didn't want to do a callback to. Never mind. No, I was going to say maybe they didn't want to do a callback this far back, but of course they did. Of course they did. They do it multiple times, and they do it horrendously each time. So maybe it was a good thing that they didn't. They may have like killed her again.
They definitely would have done. I always say this, like, oh, I wish this character could have come back, and it's like, yeah, but they would have just killed her in a worse way. Like,
yeah.
Well, yeah. The many possible episodes we could have had of Supernatural, there could have never been enough, I feel. I think even though if there had been another 300 odd episodes, we still would be sat here saying, well, they could have done this.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to get to a point where it's like, where does it end?
Yeah, it's easy to be throwing ideas out. Okay. So, Annabelle, what's our next episode?
Our next episode is Hollywood Babylon.
Oh.
So again, they're doing this shift. They're doing this shift of like horribly tragic episode to this thing.
Yeah.
This ride of an episode.
No, I'm looking forward to this. This is gonna be great. There's a lot here.
It is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be a fun episode. I'm looking forward to that one.
Well, guess who wrote it?
Ben Edlund. I knew this already.
Yes.
You think I don't know my boy Ben Edlund?
Yeah, that was the end of this episode. We're gonna have fun with the next one for sure. So the logo art was done by our good friend, the Pixel Agora. Definitely go check their Ko-fi out and their Tumblr and commission them if you would like an amazing Supernatural piece. I've seen their like renderings of Jensen and Misha. You need one in your life. So we're everywhere on social media. Tumblr, Instagram, Facebook. We also have a Redbubble. So if you wanted to get our logo on something, like a tote bag or a button or a sticker or whatever, our new logo, a portion of the profits will go to the artist. So we'd appreciate that, and so would they. So yeah, come talk to us. We would love to hear your thoughts and feelings, especially about this episode. I'm sure we all have many, many feelings about this. This episode could have been a lot worse if they brought in the Dean's theme, but they didn't, which I'm glad.
Oh, can you imagine? That would have broke me. It would have broken me, Annabelle.
Yeah, I did not cry in this episode, but I think if that music had been playing, it would have done.
It's like an instant tear trigger for me. Like, yes. Seriously.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. This week, as we walked through Purgatory, we spotted a really familiar werewolf in the distance. And then they ran out of view. So next week, hopefully, we can find our way out. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.